All right, let's jump right into it because we got a lot to go over today. So, first off, I was going to make a video today anyway, and I was going to just, record a nice top run, and I wanted to do a video, and I still probably will later on, but just record a top run and do a video of, kind of the stuff I love about the game because I feel like, sometimes it can get a little too negative. And I see people comment on my tweets or on my YouTube saying like, "Oh, you're just miserable if you hate the game, quit," blah blah blah, all that stuff, and it's just kind of silly to me because I really do love this game. There's a lot about this game I enjoy, and I do think the game is doing well. In all honesty, in totality, but there obviously are some things that we got to go over, and the biggest today is going to be sailing. So OSRS they dropped the first sailing blog, and feel like it's got to have been what, like 6 months ever since the so I think the poll passed about 8 months ago. So it's been I mean maybe even that long since we've heard anything from sailing. And I know, I saw a couple things like, oh, hopefully they just forgot about it and it got swept under the rug, but it seems like that obviously is not the case. Sailing, as it stands right now, is coming into the game, unfortunately. So yeah, I want to go over a little bit about the blog, but honestly, just my thoughts on sailing as a whole. So I'm not a fan of sailing. You probably could guess that if you know anything about me or if you've seen any of my opinions. I think that's a good point. But I do want to a lot of people think, oh, he doesn't like sailing. He's some max turbo virgin 200 mil all. I mean, if you look, this is my account. All right, this is my main. These are my stats. Like, these are not very high. I'm a pretty casual player, honestly. I like to log in after work. I like to do some TOB with the boys, or if I have a Slayer task, some AFK Vires as I'm doing now, trying to get a Zuck pet one day. But yeah, I mean, I really I don't do a lot of skilling here, and I am a pretty casual player, so I don't think that's kind of first off. That's not really where I'm coming from. I'm not some max guy who just doesn't want to skill any skill since they don't want to lose their max gate. But I guess before I get in, I also wanted to a little more positivity on the behalf of the JMod team. So when this blog dropped, I was on Twitter kind of tweeting about it, and they release it in the morning. I go to work, so I make these videos when I get home later in the day. And I think this one will probably come out Friday morning. I'll probably release it tomorrow morning. But yeah, when I was on and I was tweeting and everything, I saw Mod Light was responding to a ton of comments. She was responding to my comments specifically on this video. She said she really wanted to, hear my feedback and other players' feedback. You seemed really engaged. So I think, and in general, I've seen that. I think Mod Light does a really good job, and I think the J mods in general do a good job. And so I just wanted to kind of start off on that note. I don't want to be overtly negative to the team. Like I said, I like this game, and I like the team, and I will do a video someday. I promise. Maybe it'll be next week, I guess. On positive stuff on the game, the aspects I enjoy. But yeah, for today, let's get into it in sailing. So I think to start off, kind of on sailing. Obviously, it's the first skill in coming into old school RuneScape, and it may be the only new skill we get. I know, Bodhi, one thing on one of his videos when they released, the poll for a new skill, he said, well, we've only got this one slot here, right? If you still want to make it 3 columns, right? 3 columns in the skill tab without completely redoing the skill tab, you only have room for one slot here. So you can add one skill and then move the total level down to the bottom or whatever. But, just as far as aesthetic wise, you can only have one skill. So, it's possible that this might actually be the only skill, especially depending on how it goes. And, that's a big point. If this is the only skill, and even with it being the first skill in old school RuneScape, it's really imperative that they get this skill right. This skill has to be good, especially with it being such a big update. The devs have spent so much time, and I mean, like I said, it's already been 8 months since it passed a poll, and we're still not even, I mean, we're like a year and a half away, I would say, at least, from this skill being ready, and the state it's in, probably more. So with how much time they're going to spend on this skill, and how impactful it is to the game, it's imperative they get it right. So, I think kind of at first glance, if I'm a new player, I'm looking at sailing, I'm saying, oh, old school RuneScape's getting a new skill, right? What's going on? I'm going to go read the blogs. It's super convoluted. First you go through and you have to go through and read all of the different blogs they released on sailing when we were voting for a new skill in general, and then we voted for Do we want sailing between shamanism and tailing? Throughout all of that process, they were releasing, kind of snippets and just various info on sailing itself. And so you have to go through and read all of that, and there's just a lot going on. It's really complicated, and the skill itself, when you read it, I mean, we've got sailing's really, it's like a mix of agility and slayer and gathering skills and construction. There's just a ton going on, and you think about like what are the best. You go to the skills, like what are kind of the most old school skills in the game, right? What skills do have people love throughout the game? I mean, woodcutting's a huge one. Woodcutting's like to me the quintessential old school skill. I think old school RuneScape skilling. You go talk to even the most casual player who played in 2007 when they were a kid and haven't played, in 15 years. And what do you remember about RuneScape? Oh, I remember chopping yews in, Catherby, or not Catherby, I guess, but, in chopping yews in Varrock or whatever, right? Like, there's woodcutting, fletching, Slayer is an iconic skill in this game. Fishing is a huge one. Lobsters in Catherby, obviously, that's going to be like one of the fondest memories of a lot of players. They're all simple. These are all incredibly simple skills, right? Woodcutting, you cut, other than forestry, which is a disaster of an update. You cut trees. That's it. Fishing, you catch fish. Slayer is actually, and we can talk about Slayer. Slayer's a little more complicated, and Slayer's kind of what I think I see one of the biggest advocates for sailing is, well, a lot of it's just like Slayer, and Slayer's complicated, and Slayer's got all this stuff going on, and, you're kind of taking the combat system and locking it behind the skill. I think there's some base differences with Slayer, and Slayer, first and foremost, kind of Slayer is built around killing monsters, and killing monsters is one of the most fun aspects of the game. I think most people will agree, and I would imagine for all the data the JMods have done when they've done their polling and everything, oh, what's your favorite aspect of the game? I would imagine that PVM has to rank very high up there. People like killing monsters, it's rewarding. And you kill monsters in Slayer, and it really is just kind of a benefit. It's like, oh, here's some monsters to go kill. Now you get a 15% damage boost, right? Or you get to kill bosses that you otherwise wouldn't on a Slayer task, like Serb. And some might say, oh, that's restrictive because they're. And I'm gonna kind of talk about this later. Kind of the restrictive versus rewarding aspect. But I think part of it too is important to keep in mind that this game is built around Slayer, right? When Old School came out, Slayer was a part of the game. Slayer, I'll have to look it up. When was Slayer released? Slayer, it was like 2006, I would say. Like I was, if I was gonna guess. It's on the 2005, yeah. So Slayer was released in 2005. I would guess that most people do not remember RuneScape without Slayer. So you've kind of built in these preconceived notions of, you become okay with when the whole game has been, everything about the game is built around, well, you can't kill this boss yet because it's locked behind Slayer. Like that becomes easier to deal with and more easy to accept when the game's been built around it for, 2005, 20 years. With sailing, when you add something in, and then you lock content behind it, I think that's a little different. I think that feels different as a player. I think that kind of goes, like, one point I want to bring up is, what's the purpose of sailing? To me, like, I think of skills, they're solving problems, they're adding utility to the game. Like, what is the problem that sailing is trying to address? Like, what in this game do we have? Like, what hole in this game do we have that sailing's filling? I guess the obvious answer would be like, oh, well, sea exploration, right? You can't explore the oceans of RuneScape right now, and sailing is a part of that. I mean, I guess, are we going to get flying as the next skill? We can't really fly in the game. I mean, I guess you have, like, the Quetzal and stuff and the hot air balloon system. So are we going to make the hot air balloon system a skill? I don't think people would like that very much. But, they say that sailing, I guess, first off, I was watching the Q&A today with Husky, and the Elena and the rest of the team back when sailing was up for the poll, because it's just been so long. I have to refresh my mind of kind of the talking points. And one thing that was brought up in that is, like, is sailing like a navigation skill, and how does that work? And Husky says he doesn't see sailing being a navigation skill. To me personally, I don't see how you can differentiate sailing and navigation. I think navigation is inherently built into sailing, right? And I saw Husky says, oh, well, kind of the core gameplay mechanic is interacting with things on your ship, basically. It's interacting with the facilities on your ship for sailing. But if you're not actually, I mean, it's in the skill name. If you're not sailing itself, like, there's a navigation aspect to it in my mind. I mean, you're not going to just be at dock and doing all this stuff, gaining XP. You're going to be out in the open waters doing it. At the end of the day, I mean, navigation's a huge part. I don't think we can just dismiss navigation as sailing and say, oh, well, it's not a navigation skill, so we don't have to worry about it. And I think, I mean, navigation in and of itself, I don't think is something that needs to become a skill. And I don't think it would be something that would be fun as a skill. I don't think navigation works as a skill. Navigation in RuneScape. So let's say I want to go to the GE. What am I going to do? I'm going to pull up my magic and I'm going to teleport, right? And navigation is built into various aspects of skills. So we have magic. Teleporting is a part of magic. It's, I mean, a very small part, honestly. It's a nice utility, but you could argue agility has some navigational aspects. You use shortcuts, I guess. That's, again, agility really also is kind of a weird skill, but they, to me, the biggest aspect of agility is your run energy and the way it interacts with your run energy. And I think Jagex recognizes that's kind of its biggest aspect too. That's why they're reworking it. But yeah, for sailing, I just don't see how navigation works as a skill, because to me, travel, it's a means to an end, right? So how is it going to work with sailing? I mean, because inevitably they're gonna release new islands and new places to go, and it's gonna be kind of locked behind sailing. It's gonna require sailing to get to that island. So let's say I want to go to that island. Am I going to be forced to spend 5 minutes sailing the whole time, when at the end of the day I just want to go to the island and engage with the content there? No one enjoys the getting to point A to point B part of this game. The people don't like the run over to Nightmare is not fun. That's not enjoyable content. People just want to go to Nightmare and kill the boss, which is why they released the tablet, because so many people said this is dumb. Even DKs, which has been like kind of an iconic navigational aspect to combat, I guess. We just released a shortcut because people are like, this is silly. Why do I have to run to DKs every time? It's not adding anything to my gameplay. It's not adding anything to my enjoyment. So that's kind of sailing. A part of it to me is am I going to enjoy getting to, I just want to go to the island, right? I just want to go kill the boss. So you could say, oh, well, you'll sail there once and then you'll unlock the teleport. So then are we just building a skill around the ability to unlock teleports? That would be like if magic was just teleporting. That was it. That's all magic does. And is that I guess the navigational aspects of sailing is strange. And I just, I guess you can add other, you can say, well, there are other parts. It's not just getting point A to point B. There's the, we can go over what they released today in their in their first update. They showed kind of the three mechanics we have to train the skill, at least the three we've seen. So you've got I just say fluffing your mast. I don't actually remember what the fuck it's called, but you're basically just you're fluffing your sails so your ship goes faster. So you're literally just clicking a mast. That I think that's gonna interact strangely in the game, because so, basically you sail around and then in every minute or every 30 seconds you have to click. And so you would think, oh, that's a nice AFK training, right? You're just sailing and then you have to click every now and again. But you're paying attention during the sailing part of the skill, I would assume. I mean, you don't want to hit a shipwreck or an iceberg. You're not just going in a straight line in an open sea. And then you also have a destination. Like the map is not infinite. So I don't see how that works as a AFK activity. I mean, to me, it sounds like you're going to be, if you want to fluff your ship, you're going to have to be sailing around and you're spending a bunch of time paying attention to the game without actually gaining any XP, which that's not fun at all. I don't want to have to navigate my ship around stuff just so my sails get deflated. So then I finally get to click the button and I finally get XP then. Like that whole point, I don't want to have to engage with the game when I'm not being rewarded. That doesn't sound like a fun gameplay mechanic to me. The other ones, it's like sailing contracts. I mean, that seems super just kind of mini gamey. I mean, it's just, I guess maybe it's like hunting. I don't like hunter contracts, honestly. I don't think that like fetch and reward quest systems are, an integral part of the gameplay mechanic for skills. I mean, Hunter is, or not Hunter, sorry. They do have the Hunter contract. Slayer, you can make the argument, oh, well, that Slayer is, you go and they say, go kill this many things, and you go do it. And sailing is, go fetch this many things, and you go do it. Or go, sail to this point, and then you'll get XP with the sailing contracts. But again, I think the inherent difference is that the base underlying part behind those Slayer tasks is, like, combat in the game is enjoyable, right? I get a Slayer task and it's like, oh, go kill, 100 Serb. It's like, oh, that's fun. Yeah, I get to go kill Serb now. And I get, it gives you variety in bosses too. It's almost like a built-in, oh, go kill this, like, kind of a break. So you don't just sit there grinding the same thing all day long. Because that's what gets boring. Like, giving it the variety. It's like built-in forced variety in PVM, but the underlying portion, like the PVM part, is fun. The PVM part's enjoyable. So I just don't know if the sailing part's going to be enjoyable too. That's another worry, is that we've only seen, just seconds of actual sailing itself, like a ship on the ocean moving around. And even with the engine work and everything they've done, they said they've messed with turning radius and pathfinding in the game to try to make the ship feel more natural. It still looks super clunky. I mean, this game is, let's be honest, like, there are some serious mechanical difficulties about building in ship sailing in this game. This is a point-and-click game from 2007. Like, the engine itself, there's a lot of difficulties in building that in, and I don't think there's gonna be a way where this is not gonna feel clunky. I don't see how I'm gonna be able to sail a ship in this game and it doesn't feel strange. I just don't. I mean, movement in this game is weird, and then movement on a huge 20 by 20 ship, I don't see how that's gonna feel anything other than, like, completely weird. So I don't think that part in and of itself is gonna be fun. And I think that part has to be fun. I think if sailing around on your ship isn't fun, the skill it never will work. It's impossible for sailing to work as a skill if moving around on your ship is not fun. And I just don't see how. Maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised and maybe they'll figure something out. And, that's why I'm still waiting on the beta testing and hopefully trying it. And I'll make a follow-up after. But, man, I really think that's going to be not fun. And if that's not fun, none of this works. Because then it's, oh, well, I have to go do this sailing contract, but the sailing itself isn't fun. I don't enjoy getting from point A to point B. It feels like a hindrance, and I'm not really getting much XP when I'm doing it. And the part I have to pay attention to, I get no XP, and then I just want to be done, right? I just want it to be over with, so I finally get my XP. So I think that that's kind of worries me too. And then the last part of the gameplay mechanics they talked about was like shipwrecks. It basically just looks like AFK, like shooting stars, but at sea. I guess that part's fine. I mean, there's not a lot to get mad about just sitting there and AFKing. But, that's, it kind of brings me back to what I started the video with, is if the sailing is our first skill in old school RuneScape, it has to be good. And I see a lot of arguments like, well, fire making wouldn't pass in and of itself, or this skill wouldn't pass, thieving wouldn't pass, these skills aren't, blah 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 isn't as fun. But I think we should have a higher standard for our first skill in old school RuneScape. I think it should be better than, oh, it just has to be as bad as fire making, right? Like, it just has to be on par with the worst skills in the game. I don't think that's a good barometer, and I don't think the JMods would agree. Like, that we shouldn't shoot for that, just like, oh, just make it as bad as that. Like, don't make it the worst skill, make it the third worst skill in the game, right? Like, this should be one of the best skills in the game. People should be should be excited to engage with it, especially with how much time we're spending. I mean, think about, we've got a team of like 4 JMods doing this nonstop 8 months straight, what'll probably turn into 2 years. Think of all the content we could get in that time, right? And we're getting sailing, so like it better be good, because think of all this shit we could have gotten instead. I mean, I could have gotten top 2.0. I'd be over the moon with top. I mean, I would like top 2.0 more than any skill they could give us. Honestly, I don't like skilling, but yeah, it's got to be good. Our bar should be higher than being like on par with fire making. So I think those three gameplay mechanics they've shown, like those are kind of the issues I have with it. The only thing that seems like it might be fine is the shipwreck stuff, and that's just because it's super AFK. So it's like, okay, well, I'll at least get to sit there and AFK shipwrecks for 30 minutes and train the skill, because I don't want to engage with the actual sailing mechanics, because sailing a ship seems weird. So I think that's kind of an issue there. And then the other thing too is, you see the release of the post, and there's a lot of feedback, and honestly, I know it's hard to tell just from, kind of looking at Reddit and looking at Twitter, but from what I've seen on feedback gauging, and I would imagine the JMods probably would agree, is it seems like the feedback right now is more negative than it was when we first started polling sailing. I think less people want, if we were to poll sailing again tomorrow, I would bet it would not pass. I would think it would get 67% or something on a poll. I don't think sailing would pass right now, because I think the more we've seen, the more worries people have about it, and the less excited people are with it. And that kind of brings me to the point of like, what does this look like right now? Because a lot of the feedback so far has been negative. A lot of, especially the stuff I've seen today on the new blog post, even on Reddit. And Reddit is like, the most casual pro sailing, at least historically. I mean, sailing literally started on Reddit. It was a Reddit meme. And even on Reddit, sailing, this post has gotten negative feedback. It hasn't been even close to as positive as the feedback I was seeing when sailing was first being polled as a skill. So, it worries me if the team isn't able to dial this in, with the way they changed the polling system. Obviously, they lowered the threshold, 3 days before they polled sailing, which wasn't suspect at all. Obviously, they had nothing to do with each other, right? But yeah, I mean, with the new polling system, we've already passed like kind of the quote unquote lock-in set portion of the skill. Would the team be willing, if we weren't able to find a way where this works? Let's say we release a beta and my fears are right, and sailing feels like dog shit to move a ship around in the world. It's just super clunky. It's super unnatural. It doesn't feel fun. It just feels weird and unenjoyable. And that's the feedback. We go through some more iterations, but we're just not able to find if we're not able to find a compromise or a solution, and we're not able to get the skill to a point where people want it, would the team even be willing to scrap it? Because I'm seeing, you go on Twitter and you look at the responses to the blog post today, and I mean, over half of the responses are just scrap the thing, right? And obviously, they're saying, and I understand right now, they're like, well, we haven't even gotten to a beta yet. Like, we're not going to entertain scrapping sailing when we've released one blog on it since it passed a poll, and the blog had 15 seconds of actual gameplay mechanics, right? But if we do keep going down the line and that's what worries me, is we get to a point where people still don't like it, or they like it even less than they like it now, but we've spent so much time on it and so many dev hours that, management basically kind of forces the team to release it. And I think that's a real possibility. And, I don't really see how we would ever get an answer to the question. I mean, it's hard for the JMods to say like, yeah, if sailing really sucked, we would scrap it, because I don't know if they have the authority, the JMods we interact with, right? So let's say like Husky and Light and Elena and even Ash, do they have the authority to make that decision that we're gonna scrap sailing after they've spent so much dev time on it? They've already promoted it. I mean, they've spent marketing money on it. They've promoted it to new players, like, hey, this new skill is coming out in old school RuneScape. That's what worries me, is that we spend all this time and sailing just doesn't get to a good point, and we're just forced to release it anyway, and we just have sailing, which no one enjoys in the game, and we've spent 2 years on it, and it's just a net negative skill. Because I had watched I was on a run yesterday, and I was listening to the Mod Sarni Sebe cast. He was talking with Sebe, and Sebe asked him like, hey, if you were to scrap one, piece of content in the game, what would it be? And he kind of gave a roundabout answer like, I don't like blah blah content, right? I'm a JMod, blah blah blah, politically correct. And then kind of at the end, he's like, but forestry's definitely got its issues. And with forestry, we saw that forestry passed a poll, and it went out to beta, and then the beta never really happened, and they released blog posts on it, and people are like, hey, this seems really bad, we don't really think we like it. And it's like, well, it's past a poll, it's coming into the game. And it came into the game, and we had to spend months revising it, months on forestry part 2 and then forestry part 3, and it still isn't in a good point. It's still not I think it's a net negative addition to the game. Other than, the tree mechanics are nice, the way they change up the tree mechanics, but forestry events and the whole kind of forester system like that is a net negative. It makes the skill worse. So my point is, on that cast, Sarni was like, hey, I don't want that situation again, or I don't want to avoid a forestry again by any means necessary, by kind of taking that community feedback early to mind and not being afraid to kind of scrap this idea early on, even if it has passed a poll. But are we willing to do that with sailing? Because that's honestly, at least from the really early the really early feedback, that's what I've seen going on. So I'm curious. I know this is a longer ramble. There's a lot going on here. And, I didn't pull the blog post up just because I wasn't really going over line by line on kind of the post itself. But if you guys are interested in reading the post, I'll link it in the description. I'll also link my Twitter, where I'll have more discussion on sailing as a whole. And I'm curious, let me know what you guys think about sailing. Are you excited to come into the game? Specifically, what did you guys vote on the poll? Did you vote for sailing to come into the game? And how have these latest posts made you feel? Have they kind of affirmed your decision to vote for sailing, or have they made you change your mind? Do you not want sailing now, or did you not want sailing before and you want it now? So let me know what you guys think, and if your mind's changed at all in the last couple of months as we've learned a little more about sailing. So appreciate for watching, guys, and yeah, have a good one.